The big data surveillance project, I think, is particularly important now. When things started out, obviously pre-COVID, pre-epidemic, I don't think anybody could have foreseen the speed with which things have developed globally and in our country with regard to surveillance and the use of technologies to surveil, sometimes in many cases for the purposes of good, sometimes not so good. What we want to do is make sure that those technologies of surveillance are used in a way which is going to benefit society. That's the focus of this project. It's the focus for me as a regulator in overseeing these kinds of projects to make sure that they're in accord with the law, but also that they're good public policy that helps to benefit citizens.
What we see in this report are subject matter experts sounding the alarm on the gap between what's before us with surveillance capital and the ubiquitous way in which technology is far surpassing any frameworks of regulation or legislation, the knowledge gaps that I have observed within government, within legislative processes in the House of Commons, and the need to bridge that gap to, in fact, catch up to the advances in technology in a way that is focused on rights, focused on citizens' ability to control their own information and data, and have informed consent when they are embarking on contracts or engaging in the purchasing of products, both real and online, to be able to fully understand what it is they're signing off on and how that information is going to be used and reused through third parties and other opportunities.
Working together with academics, with civil society, has been a hallmark of this project and a really important aspect of it. And again, its work is so timely given the events of the last 2 years and the acceleration of some of these trends we've seen in surveillance.
The strength of the report is it provides an easy entry into the issues, so we can have a broad, informed public debate with members of the public. I talk to a lot of teenagers, I talk to a lot of kids, I talk to a lot of parents and educators, and everyone has these deep concerns about surveillance issues. But when you talk about AI and algorithms, people all kind of put their hands up and say, look, I don't understand how this works. And so much of it is people will say, oh, it's all advertising, but there's this unease among the general population. It's not all about advertising. I'm starting to see my own emails being censored by my email provider, or my child is coming home and they're enrolled in all of these surveillance systems and I don't want them there, but I don't know what to do about it. And so I think a report like this, it just sort of lays out the field in plain language and says, yeah, you're right to be concerned. And here are the things that we found as we've looked at this over the last 7 years.
Well, I think what I really see in the report is this shift from talking about privacy to talking about data justice. And that I think one of the things that as a society, as a community, we want to articulate as a new normative foundation for what's taking place here. And that privacy is certainly part of it, but that goes beyond that. And I think goes beyond simply thinking about privacy as a universal to think about it, the differential nature of privacy. And so the fact that certain communities are more affected by a lack of privacy. And so where do we go? And the idea of data justice is a way of trying to think about how building our technical infrastructure, our digital society, is one that I think needs to foreground social justice front and center, and that it's where I'm excited by the work in data justice.
There is a myriad of different issues raised by contemporary surveillance, and you can go down any route and it becomes a rabbit hole of particular issues. What we were trying to do in this project was also to bring people together who came from very different backgrounds, not only academically, but organizationally, different layers of government, from the corporate sphere, and so on and so forth, to try to see that there are some key issues that confront us all, despite the differences in background, despite the differences whether we're dealing with one specific area or another, such as national security or policing surveillance, or whether we're talking about corporate surveillance.
There's a larger conversation now about how data collectively is used and abused, how it's communicated, how it's captured, and what should be off limits, where privacy is not enough, consent's not enough, what is an appropriate use of data for social purposes? What is an inappropriate use of data for social? Where should we have no-go zones? What forms of data should simply not be processed for various purposes? And that is all sort of captured in a larger notion of data justice, that there are just ways to use data. There's just surveillance, if you like, just monitoring, appropriate monitoring, and inappropriate monitoring.
At the Canadian Civil Liberties Association, we actually believe that big data surveillance with all of the social impacts, all of the rights that it affects, is one of the defining civil liberties issues of our time. It is absolutely imperative that this kind of research become well known and that it serves to inspire and motivate people to do the work that needs to be done to improve our laws, to get better policies, and to think through really fundamental questions about if and then when and how these kinds of technologies have a place in our society.
We all need an education in this. And something that I've really found is that talking to community leaders, to politicians, to sort of public service leaders, to others, people may know their own small field of this quite well. But when you step a little bit outside of it, there's a huge lack of comfort. And what often happens is people end up falling back on either simple materials that they pick up that they don't know where they came from. Very often they come from the tech companies themselves. Or else they actually turn to the tech companies for training and awareness. And I think the more we can avoid that, the better we're going to be.
I think the importance is looking beyond just privacy legislation to make a difference. I think we need to bring together other types of regulation, human rights legislation. We need to bring together competition and content moderation, because we need to take back control from the big platforms and make sure society is protected.